our iPads and also because our teachers were, at least at the secondary level, really well prepared to go online. But our elementary and middle school teachers really adjusted quickly and have done an outstanding job. And we've been getting just a ton of feedback from parents and community members just about our approach and how we're handling things. Of course, we've had some folks that haven't been super happy, but we're trying our best to make accommodations for them as well. Fortunately, also, some places like Union City and Northwestern and Seneca, Wattsburg area, they have 40 to 50% of their students who don't have internet access. And that really wasn't the case for us. I think we ended up purchasing, right before everything happened, we ended up purchasing, what was it, Ed, 50 hotspots?
Right. Yep, we got 50.
And we gave all of those away, I believe, to families.
We gave out about half of them so far.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that tells you that of our 1,800 kids, the vast majority have internet access at home because very few aren't logging on right now to do their work. So just a really small handful. And we've been reaching out individually to those folks who haven't logged in and done any work. And we're trying to be extremely flexible with them. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into the agenda here, Ed, and I believe you're going to start us off with the first couple of items, right?
I'm going to, yeah. Before I get into the PowerPoint, though, let me go back to the board meeting material folder. Find the right place here. So if you look at board meeting material folder and then April 20 is a budget and forecast folder, and within that folder for this dated March 2nd. So as you'll learn in just a bit here, that's probably going to change to some extent. And then there's also an IFO, Independent Fiscal Office, for projected revenue forecast for PA due to the shutdown. So that's their kind of best estimate as to where we're going to be this next year. So that's what's in the folder. I do have the PowerPoint posted. So that's there for your reference. I'm going to go through that right now. So we're looking at the Treasurer's report. Hang on 1 minute here. So we're looking at the Treasurer's report for March of 2020. We're 9 months through the fiscal year. March didn't get impacted too much from the shutdown, about half the month. So March 16 is the first day of the shutdown. So you can see revenues and expenditures there. Total cash and investments of just over 9 million. That is down about $1.6 million, which is not unusual this time of year. We're spending cash down towards the last half of the year. If you can see my cursor up in the top right there, EIT, so still showing some strength for earned income taxes. I think we'll get impacted here to some extent in the second quarter of the 2020 year, be our fourth quarter for the fiscal year. So we'll see that quarter get impacted to some extent, just because people have been laid off. There's less income to report, and so we'll see some reduction there, I believe, in that last quarter. State revenue. So Colleen will tell you about some of the laws. I think they've been passing laws so quickly that I don't think Colleen and George can keep up with them. But one of the laws that they did pass at the state level is that the state subsidies would not be impacted for this year. They'd be the same as though the shutdown did not occur. Now, next year will be a different story, but this year they'll be the same as what we're expecting. So that is general fund. For Norbit, you see on the right side of the screen here, February would be the most recent period reported there. So you can see the blue would be funding, the orange would be claims. So we had a little bit of an up month for February. So you can see the purple, which is the right scale, shows us the months in the balance is just over 7. I think we had a surplus for the month of about 19,000. So hopefully we'll see that trend continue through the end of the fiscal year. So that is Norbit. EIT. So March, you can see there is consistent with the previous end of quarter months, the last 2 quarters. Typically, May would be a pretty significant month for collections. I think this May will be impacted. We'll see that in early June sometime. I'm going to flip forward here to investments. So these are the March 2020 investments. Total of 20,088 for all funds. Most of the money is invested currently, at least if it's in money market at First National, at 1.65%. Now that rate will end at the end of April. May 1st, they'll adjust it to some lower rate at that point in time. You can see the CD that we purchased for the general fund, 3 million back in December. We purchased that. 1.9 is looking really good right now. For cap projects, we have 3.7 million at 1.65%, and then we have the CD portfolio, 6.2 million. You'll see in my notes over here, I think I meant to put these under cap projects, but you can see for the Erie Bank money, the 6.2 million here, 2 million is at 1.25% in their money market fund. And then the CDs make up 4.3 million. That is in the range of this 1.8 to 2.8 that I show here. We're now looking at investing in new CDs at Erie Bank, and they're looking at a range of 1.2 to 1.25 for a 1-year period. So we're beginning to buy some of those right now. The district retirement benefit account, you can see the investment there, 1.65, and then food service fund at 0.6%. So those are the investments. Overall, we're down 1.65 million. That's due primarily to the general fund. And then the next couple of funds here, you can see cap projects. So a balance of 9,979,000. You can see spending of 823,000. I believe our budget was just over $1 million or 1.1 million. Some of those projects won't get completed this year. They'll get pushed into next year. I'm going to review those projects with the administrators in a couple of days here. But anything that doesn't get finished this year will just push into next year. For the district retirement benefit account, you can see the balance here, 753,000. That is as planned. And then for cafeteria, so half of the month for cafeteria, well, for all funds was before the shutdown. After the shutdown, we began to prepare lunches for pickup, initially at the Weiss Library. So those lunches, the count that first week, started March 17, was about, well, it was under 100, anywhere from 75 to 100. This past week, we saw counts upwards of 350. And I'm seeing this week, Friday, about 370 for Friday. So we're continuing to see the lunch counts tick up. And of course, all those lunches are free to all the Fairview residents who want them for their kids 18 years and younger. And it's all paid through the federal government, through one of the stimulus packages that was passed. So we're looking to be about break even for the year for cafeteria fund, even with the shutdown period. So that is the cafeteria fund. I want to just flip, oh, here's the student activity account. You can see high school. Well, I have these flipped around. High school is actually 51,000. The middle school is 2,000. And then student membership is down 6, and that's really due to the otters withdrawing and moving back to their home area. So 1,806. And then I want to just show you real quick kindergarten. So we'll begin to track this the end of April. So you can see last year's April number was about 80. This year we're currently at 89 for kindergarten enrollment, so a little bit higher this year. And then what I attempted to do is to project where revenues and spending will end up the end of this year. I don't think we're going to be impacted too much by the shutdown, but this is my best guess at this point. So this column that my cursor's in right now, this is the estimated increase or reduction. So these are sorted most favorable to least favorable going to the bottom. The special education refund, this is based on last year's reconciliation of the IU contract. So this is money actually received. Earned income taxes, even with the shutdown and the layoffs, I expect we're going to be above budget by about 35,000. It would have been much higher than that had the shutdown not occur. Retirement subsidy will be up a little bit. This is due to wages will be higher than budget. You'll see that on the next screen here in just a minute. Property taxes. This is complete. We exceeded budget by 22,937. And then Social Security subsidy, 5,000 again because wages will exceed the budget there. So wages drives the Social Security subsidy and the retirement subsidy. And then transportation subsidy will be under budget by 24,567. That's an actual number based on the calculations from last year. And then delinquent real estate taxes. This is really just a guess. I'm assuming we'll get impacted here that folks won't have the ability to pay this like they may have otherwise if they were employed. So I'm estimating that'll be under budget by 117,000. So that's the revenue side. At the bottom line though, we're about even for revenues, about even with budget. And then on the spending side, looking at the third from the right column here, estimated actual increase or reduction. Again, these are sorted most favorable to least favorable. We are going to save money. This is primarily due to the shutdown. In the area of supplies, sub-teachers, travel, repairs, diesel fuel, legal and audit. So all those will be under budget by those amounts as indicated. And then down here above budget will be tuition to other schools, pension. This is based on the higher wages. The wages here, this is higher than budget because of long-term subs for sabbaticals and child rearing leave. So that'll be above budget by about 138,000. And then medical, I'm listing here the Norbit balance as it stands at the end of February. So there's a negative 350. And between March and June, that could change. But I'm just using the February balance right there. So given that, you can see we're going to be over budget by 86,000. So really pretty close to where budget, we're expected to be for budget if you combine revenues and spending. I'm going to pause there for just a minute just to see if the group has any questions on this year and the treasurer's report. Okay, so I'll move on then to agenda item 3, which is the 2021 update. There's really more that we don't know about next year than what we do know. This is my best guess about how we might be impacted
Hey,
for
Ed,
next year. Yeah, go ahead.
just one thing before you get into the next year's budget, just for the board's, did we freeze up? Oh, just for the board's purpose, if they get asked questions, I know that we've gotten a couple of emails from folks asking, hey, you're saving all this money right now. Are you going to reimburse some people for school taxes? Or are you going to, what are you going to do about that? And can you just give a kind of a 1-minute summary of why that isn't the case? I mean, I know you just showed it, but the reasons that we're not having this significant savings right now that some people might think we are.
So there was a perception from at least one taxpayer. They had initially emailed Alan. Alan forwarded it to me. Um, and they were under the impression that we're saving quite a bit of money, especially in the area of transportation. Um, but you can see from these numbers that we're really not saving all that much. So I didn't really touch on this the first pass through, but when you look at transportation on here, this is just spring ECA, but when you look at the overall transportation contract, it's in excess of $1 million. But we are continuing to pay Durham that contract. And that was allowed based on legislation that was passed recently. And they gave us the ability to continue to pay our transportation contractor. The idea would be then is they would keep all their drivers employed and all their staff employed. So basically our staff at the bus garage would stay as it was before the shutdown. And that's the reason why we're continuing to pay them. If we didn't do that, those drivers could really go elsewhere, find other employment. And once we get back into school, we may not have drivers or enough drivers at that point in time. And it takes a long time, 3+ months to train and certify drivers. I mean, that's just one area. But if you look overall, we do have savings noted here in several categories, but we also are expecting to be over budget in some areas as well. So bottom line, we're not going to have a lot of savings. And there really isn't, I mean, Colleen can touch on this if she wants to, but there really isn't a mechanism to refund money to taxpayers for this current year. I mean, you could reflect that in next year's millage for 2021. But there's a lot that we need to learn yet about next year before we even get to that point. But just as a brief explanation, that's where we stand for this year.
Ed, a lot of this goes, we haven't used this terminology a lot recently, but there was a time where we were talking a lot about discretionary versus non-discretionary spending. And this kind of goes back to that point where most of our spending is non-discretionary.
Right.
And it was what? It was 90+%.
Yeah, 90+%, exactly.
And that's because it's locked into contracts, whether it be with support staff or professional staff, as well as contracts with for health insurance and other contracted services.
Right. Now, the gentleman that emailed me and Alan and Eric as well he is a senior on Social Security, had a part-time job. I think that's been reduced due to the shutdown, and they have income issues. And he was wondering, hey, is there any money coming back that'll help, taxpayers? So that was the question that came through. I answered it with this information that I have, not in all this detail, but I gave him a summary of the large areas of savings, but then areas where we're also going to spend more money.
How I initially responded was along the general lines that Ed is talking about, that our operations continue largely intact. He really was focusing a lot on basically utilities and transportation costs. And I tried to, suggest to him that as Eric said, most of our obligations are fixed but by contract with our staff and our labor costs and our contractual obligations to our vendors, such as Durham. So, and then I just told him that, he'd get a more detailed answer. And Ed did a great job of supplying a fairly, obviously not a nuts and bolts like we're getting tonight, but a very comprehensive answer. And then he responded again with, well, what about utilities and transportation costs? So I don't think he was, I appreciate it. I thanked him for reaching out. I thanked him for contacting us. I assured him that we always look for efficiencies, whether we're, completely humming along as normal or we're enduring a situation like this. Administration is always looking for efficiencies and where to find them. And as you can see, we're finding some efficiencies, but we're also finding some other challenges. So sometimes people just, they certainly deserve an answer. They deserve a response. I think this gentleman got a very detailed, comprehensive response, both in general terms by me and in very specific terms by Ed, but I think he was basically looking for a different answer rather than the answer. So if you do get that in the community, as Eric said, feel free to, respond with the information you learn through our meetings and through our own processes here. But it certainly feel free to forward those on to whoever might be more responsive with the greater detail as happened here. And I want to thank you, Ed, for doing that.
Yeah, and the
You're
only
welcome.
the guidance that we got from the state is that we continue to pay all of our employees with one exception, and they term that one exception intermittent employees. So we view intermittent employees as day-to-day substitute teachers, folks that would be keeping the score book or the game clock at an event because they're only employed if that event should take place. And other than that, that's really it. Our coaches are going to continue to get paid based on legislation. All of our extra duty responsibilities will be paid if they were already board approved. It's just those intermittent folks that won't get paid. And we will reflect, referees and that sort of thing. That will reflect some sort of a savings, but pretty negligible at the end of the day.
I would echo what Ed and Eric have already said. The legislation that has been passed discusses continuing to pay employees as if there was no shutdown, and they are correct. There is no mechanism for refunding any property tax that's already been paid. As Ed said, legislation's passing fast and furious. We have new legislation today about extending discount periods or waiving penalty and interest, but that's for the next round of taxes paid, not ones that have been paid already.
Mm-hmm. And Colleen, the notion of freezing 2021 taxes, I know that's on the floor, but that hasn't been approved yet, correct?
Correct.
Anything else on 1920? There were, if you look up at the top here, supplies, travel, repairs. As far as travel goes, most of our budget was not spent. You can see it's down 67%. We had a lot of competitions. In fact, our swim team, I don't think they were quite to Bucknell or wherever they traveled to swim, and they were called back. It was canceled at that point. At least AA was. I think AAA had already competed. Our robotics team was already to their destination, and they were called back. So a lot of these competitions that cost a fair amount of money were canceled. A lot of conferences were canceled. So a fair amount of travel money wasn't spent for those reasons.
So this is Alan, do you have a projected budgetary variance end of year? I just have the expenditures on the screen now, and I know you went over.
So spending will be over by 86,000. Revenues will be over by about 8,000. So just over. Over by 70,000 or so is the current estimate. Negative variance about 70,000.
Okay. And our normal variances are typically positive, are they not?
We have seen several years of positive variances that have been fairly significant. So yes, a lot depends on medical. Right now we're saying it's going to be over by 350. If we see some decent surpluses the next 4 months, maybe that's through March, March through June, maybe that changes. And of course, on the revenue side, the big assumption here was delinquent real estate taxes and that being under by 117. So
okay.
Between those two, it could swing it quite a bit depending on how things work out.
All right, thank you.
Sure. So looking at 2021, as I mentioned before, there's a lot that we don't know about next year. But anyway, I think where we'll be impacted is state revenue, certainly. They're looking at a $4 billion deficit on a budget that's normally about $31 billion. So from a percentage standpoint, that's pretty significant for them. That will certainly impact district revenues that are paid next year. We saw the same thing back after the 2008 recession. we saw state revenues decline the next 2 years after the '08 recession, and federal stimulus money filled in the gap there for 2 years. And I'm hoping that that happens for this next year as well. I understand the federal government is working on some kind of stimulus package for state and local governments, so we may see that happen here before long. EIT, simply because we're going to have less than earned income from folks that live in Fairview Township. Earnings on investments, because of lower rates in the market, they're dropping pretty fast. Real estate taxes, really hard to gauge. I looked at the last recession, '08, and our collection rate dropped to about 95.1. The budget assumption is 95.8. Historically, that's about where we hit, but that collection rate did drop down into the low 95s at that time. Each 1/10 of a percentage point is about $18,000. So it kind of gives you an idea of how to gauge that. And then delinquent real estate taxes, if folks decide to put off those payments for another year, if they can afford to do that. And of course, we don't really know right now in federal stimulus, so we'll have to watch the news updates on that. As far as legislation goes, I mean, Colleen might want to hit on some of these, but just a few I'll talk about here. House Bill 1076. They're talking about, and I think this has to do with more of the municipal budgets, but seniors can volunteer to qualify for property tax credit. I'm not really sure what that would look like. We don't really have the mechanism worked out in Fairview for something like that, but I think that will be available to seniors. House Bill 974. Eric referred to this earlier, the possible amendment to free school property taxes at the 1920 rate for this next year. Senate Bill 841, I have pending signature here by Governor. That did get signed today, and Colleen referred to this just a few minutes ago. So the discount period running through August 31, this isn't any different than current law. They may address this further for school taxes. To waive a reduced penalty through December 31st, this is new. This is something the board could consider. So as of the end of October, we're at the end of the face period, and November, December are typically penalty months, where if taxes are paid during those months, the taxpayer would pay a 10% penalty on top of the tax that they would pay at that point in time. So you have the ability as a board to waive or reduce this penalty through December 31. So that'll be something that we'll end up talking about as we go here. That requires a board resolution 30 days from the effective date of this legislation. I think the effective date would be today, so within the next 30 days. So sometime, one of the 2 May board meetings, we may want to revisit that. And then based on current law, we could expand the number of installment payments. So we do have 3 installment payments now. They run August, September, October. And of course, those are not at a discount. They're at the face amount. They simply just take the face amount of their taxes, divide by 3, and pay a third of each of those months. We could expand that. And the example I have here is August through December, and do 5 installments. That's another option the board has to make things easier for taxpayers as they go through this next year. So just a few pieces of the legislation there. Colleen, I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to address there.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. No, I think those were the highlights, specifically as to the legislation that was passed today in terms of extending the deadlines for Senate Bill 841. I think we have to do it prior to 6:30, so we might have a little bit of time, but still within that time horizon of looking at it in May to determine if we want to extend that so that there wouldn't be a penalty period towards the end of the year. I think that was probably one of the most critical things that came out today.
Okay. And then just a little bit on timeline. Oh, I'm sorry. This
sorry.
is,
This is Fran. I have a question on that
Go
real
ahead.
quick. Is that something we would have to make an announcement to the taxpayers on if those extensions or discounts were going to be made available?
yeah,
Or
we would
waived, I should
certainly,
say, not
we would,
necessarily.
a couple things, Fran. We would advertise it. We would also make it available on the tax bill. So when they receive the tax bill, it would identify those installment periods on the tax bill if that were the case. Also, it identifies the penalty period on the tax bill. If we're going to waive that, we would identify that or reflect that on the tax bill as well. So all those decisions would be made prior to final budget adoption, and then we can reflect on the tax bill exactly what was decided.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. You know, ways that we can possibly balance next year's budget. I think the impact of those revenues I showed you that would potentially go down, the impact, it really depends on how long we're shut down and how quickly people can get back to work. That could, I mean, the range is large. My initial estimates were 200,000 to 1,300,000 as far as reduction to revenue. So it could be significant, but certainly ways we could balance next year's budget is we have the committed fund balance, our savings account out there at 1.4 million, and there's no plan to spend that. But the idea there was to have those funds available in case something happened in the future. Cap projects fund could pay long-term debt. That's in addition to capital projects, it can pay long-term debt. So it could take some pressure off the general fund if that if we decide that's an option we want to look at. Norbit funding holiday. So we're showing just over 7 months right now in that balance. If it stays at 7 or increases a bit, we could look at perhaps 1 month for next year. That could help us bridge the gap there a little bit. After the last recession, 2008, there was a pay freeze initiative at the state level. I'm guessing we're going to see that again. I don't know at this point. I mean, I haven't heard anything yet, but I would guess that that's going to come out at some point. And then, of course, holding on any new hires. So, I mean, those are certainly ways that we can look at maybe bridging the gap for next year. And just a little bit on timeline. This is all going to go very quickly at this point. We have 2 meetings in May. Ordinarily, I'd be looking at the first May meeting for the proposed final budget. I really have no idea what that proposed final budget would look like. So I'm suggesting that we look to do that on May 18. I'm hoping we'll have some more information before that time that we can include. We need to post the state format of the budget 20 days prior to final adoption. So if we look at final adoption on June 22nd, that would be the last meeting for this fiscal year. We would want to post that by May 19. And we would need to advertise 10 days prior to final adoption or by June. I guess it would be about June 10th. And then we have the Act 1 Homestead Farmstead Exclusion Resolution. That'll be on June 8th. So we've got 3 meetings prior to final adoption where we'll get updates on what's happening at the state and federal level, and we'll understand maybe to some extent how we're going to be impacted on the revenue side. In the meantime, the state's going to be going through their budget process, and it's going to change significantly from where it was back in early March. So we'll kind of watch and see how that plays out. Those are the things I wanted to hit right now for 2021. I'm sorry, there's just not a lot of good information yet for next year.
Ed, can you go back one screen, please?
Yep.
That last bullet on the previous screen there, the hold on any new hires, that would be more applicable probably to support staff rather than teachers. We need to continue with our teacher hires because one way or another, learning isn't going to stop, whether it's face-to-face or online. And the one hire, there are a few that are really critical that we lock into place. Pam can probably tell you this. Mill Creek has already started hiring folks for next year, so they were sort of out to be the first ones out of the gate this year. We have one hire on the agenda tonight, and that is for the Fairview Middle School Autistic Support position. That's the new position that we're adding. And this is a young lady from originally from this area, but she's been living and teaching in Virginia for the last several years. And she's someone that we really want to get on board now, because there's a lot of planning with Mr. Neese and his team that goes into that position before next year. The other really critical position, we don't have it on the agenda tonight, but we probably could have, because we have a candidate selected, and that is our new speech therapist to replace Mrs. Sitnick, who retired this year. We do have someone that we're going to recommend for that position. She's currently a speech therapist in another district, and we'll have her for the next meeting. So I wouldn't recommend that we hold off on teacher hires. Otherwise, we're not going to get the folks that we have targeted for those positions. But when it comes to support staff and other maybe non-critical positions, we could push those back as long as possible.
I have another question on this slide as well. So the pay freeze, would that be something really that would conflict with your contracts?
Do you remember last time that happened, Pam? After 08, the governor came out and really asked everyone to take a pay freeze. And even though we were contractually obligated for those increases, all of our unions agreed to that. Ed, I don't think we did it for the support staff, though, did we?
I believe the support staff did get an increase. The administrators and teachers took a pay freeze.
Yeah.
I think it
But
was
that was
the
something they,
10-11 year.
and that was something they agreed upon?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, we're not sure that that's going to happen. That's just an assumption based on where things are right now. It may or may not. And, PSEA may not support it. They did last time. But, who knows what will happen this time.
Actually, that was actually, I think, maybe the 11-12 year. And that same year, we had no property tax increase as well.
Yeah, that was 11.
And I'll just chime in there real quick. That was there was a boomerang effect to the rates that followed. If you recall, we had a sharp increase or number of increases in the 2 or 3 years that followed that 0%. So while it's very politically expedient to advocate for level taxation, you pay for it in the years that follow.
You do.
And they could, there's the slide.
This is what Alan's referring to right here. So this is 11-12, but then we had about a 3%, just shy of 3 the next year.
Which was a full percentage point over the Act 1 index. And then we exceeded the index 3 times after that.
Right.
It wasn't until 16, 17 that we were able to pull things back together and fall under the index. So I wonder how flatter that curve would have been without the 0%. I mean, it was certainly an appropriate thing to do at the time, and it may be an appropriate thing to do now, depending how all this is impacted. But the pending legislation certainly has its merit, but there are also consequences to consider longer term.
Ed, do you want to cover transfers and amendments, and we'll come back to the FHS renovation?
Sure. So I've got budgetary transfers up here. The first one is to
Alan just wanted to see his slide, I think.
yeah. So this first one is this one is to balance accounts at the middle school. So this typically happens to move money where the actual spending is occurring. The second one is to move money to innovation supplies at the high school. The third one is to add funds to the FES gifted supply account. I think Ryan had the plan of buying additional VR headsets. That has not happened since the shutdown. So those funds are sitting on hold at this point. The next one is to balance accounts at the high school. A couple small amounts there. We took some money from dues, fees, advertising, and purchase services to supplies for the business office. We had a need to buy some stuff for working from home. So that helped us cover some of those expenses. And then the next one is to reclass the transfer for the district retirement benefit account to the proper account. So the state designated a different account there. The next one here is for our school security officer to transfer amounts from the contracted service we were contracting to the county. We now have employed Brian Raz, and you can see his wage and benefit accounts set up here in that one. The last one is to set up the Fast Bridge training, the 3,000, which I believe there's a motion on tonight for that item. So those are the transfers. And then the amendment. So the amendment, what this does, is it adds 25,000 in a grant called Teachers in the Workplace. So this grant is meant to cover teacher salaries and supplies. That's on the revenue side. This is on the spending side. The revenue side is up top here. You can see the addition of that grant to revenue. So Justin may have some more information on that to explain to you what that's for.
Yeah, Matt and Luke and I wrote a grant. It was for the overall umbrella was teachers in a workplace or career education. So we wrote the grant to help supplement some of the work our teachers are doing for the academies. So part of that will go towards a stipend. And then we left $5,000 in there go towards supplies to really, take like the STEM Academy and the Medical Academy to the next level, and then to kickstart the business, the arts, and the Human Services Academy.
So that takes us through the transfers and amendments. Eric, I'll take us back to the committee of the whole here.
Any questions for Ed on any of those items before we jump back to number 4? With number 4, there's two things I'd like to discuss here. First is, one is we had a meeting last week with HHSDR, Vince and Tara, and they gave us an update on some design things. And number 2 is just talking overall. Ed and I had a discussion with Attorney Joseph last week, just overall about the project, and actually we spoke with Alan too, but just overall about the project and the opportunity right now, or lack thereof for that matter. And I think we can talk about that as a group, but right now, we're going to move forward as if this thing is continuing on schedule. And, we think that there may actually be some opportunities both on the borrowing side as well as the construction cost side, depending on where things end up over the next several months. Or there may not be. I mean, rates may go the other direction, and contractors may not be interested in the project. But moving forward doesn't obligate us to anything. If we open up bids and find out that they're not where we like them, if they're way over Vince's projected budget, then we don't move forward. But our discussion was let's work ahead on this thing as if we're continuing. If there's a roadblock, of course we'll put the brakes on. Alan, any other comments on that? I know that was kind of a quick summary of what we talked about.
Yeah, I think that it is. Obviously, we have to be sensitive, keenly sensitive to the impact of these other factors on our budget and our ability to stay within the Act-1 index to continue with this project as it has been planned. But when Eric says opportunities, I think that's something we have to explore in terms of reduced financing costs due to dropping rates and reduced or more competitive bidding based on maybe a perceived reduction in construction projects. As you know, things have been were really hot in the construction industry, very competitive, and we've been very concerned for the past year or more over the ability to come in at or under budget through construction costs and getting contractors interested to bid and work on the project. That might change with the current climate. It might. And Ed made a comment during our discussions that the only time that Vince obviously has a matrix for these costs that increase. They never decrease. Construction always goes up every year, and except in the years or couple of years that followed the last recession. So if history repeats itself, we could actually see a reduction in costs of the project if things contract in the construction marketplace. So as Eric said, I think we don't necessarily have to, we just continue on course would be my recommendation. Keep on schedule with the state and the approvals and the preparation of construction documents and bid book and all that good stuff. And then when we get to the point where we'll see where we are in terms of our budget, we'll see where we are in terms of our income, how that might be affecting our cap projects fund, if at all. And we make reasonable decisions, instead of saying, well, we're heading into a recession, so we ought to just put the brakes on and scrap it. I think it's wise to just take it one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time, until we get to a point where we do have to make a decision to contract for that project. So that's essentially where things are. So we're obviously relying heavily on Ed's expertise, Eric's leadership, and of course our architects' perception of costs and where those are going, either up or down.
Yeah, and Alan, you're going to hear us say that a lot in the next couple of months, probably about a variety of items, because we just don't know what we're going to be allowed to do. I don't have it as an agenda item, but even looking at things as simple as baccalaureate and commencement, we just don't know if we're going to be allowed to proceed with those as scheduled. So as well as, we like to be planned, but in this climate, it's just hard to plan, not knowing what what we're allowed and not allowed to do. So as far as the project goes, they were doing all the core samples. Even when there was a stay put order in place initially, they finished up that core sampling here at the high school. John has folks scheduled to come in, I believe, starting tomorrow at the high school to do some other work with Vince and his group. So we're going to move forward as if this thing is progressing. Of course, it's going to be pushed back because there was a stoppage in construction. I know even that big project down in Pittsburgh has been halted for a couple of weeks. So that's going to back all the contractors up for a little bit at least. But unless we hear otherwise from the board, we'll continue. Of course, we're only locked in each time you approve the next stage of PlanCon. So we don't want to get held up right now. John, do you want to give a quick summary of what's happening this week? Because I know you have some folks coming in.
Yeah, they're coming in tomorrow. It's actually our architects with an electrical contractor. They're looking at the old electrical services, if there's anything that's usable, and they're trying to figure out the points from the old building to tie into the new building. So they have to match things on the prints from the old building and make sure they really are where the prints say they are. It's kind of, we did the same thing with plumbing about 6 months ago. So this is the electrical side of that, where it's to see if we can reuse anything. So they'll go through every electrical box tomorrow and check it against their paperwork, making sure it's in the right spot. And then also the mains coming in and making sure everything is sized correctly. So that's also the reason we're keeping that building shut the rest of the week. So it will open back up on Monday. So that'll give the building some time to rest. And, 6 days, the virus should die down if there's any contamination. So there's no employees that will be in the building from tomorrow through Monday.
Yeah.
Except for some essential. I'll still have some custodial there, but that's about it.
This is Fran. I have another question. Did I see somewhere that school construction was considered more of a necessity, where it will be permitted to continue prior to other construction? In that case, if that's true, if it's the only work the contractors can get, that might also benefit us
point.
in getting some better pricing or whatever, that we could even move ahead faster than originally planned, just because we can get the better deals on it. But they said it was a necessity for schools. There was something from the IU that came through on that. I don't know, Colleen, if you recall anything along those lines.
I'm going back to look at the PDE guidance now on shutdown and essential services. There was something I saw on work and school, so I'll check that and see if I can get an answer for you real quick.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I want to throw in there is, don't forget, we've made a window of state approval that was open briefly and then closed, as I recall. Is that right, Eric?
That's correct.
So, I mean, in terms of timing our state approvals and our state reimbursements, there's definitely a timing issue when it comes to this project that could be greatly affected if it was deferred. But again, we're going to take it step by step and do what's in the best interest of the district.
So Alan, that moratorium, it opened a window beginning July 1, 2018. And we got in at that point in time. I think maybe the application date was August, but at any rate, we got in with a group of other projects, and the timeline runs 3 years from that point in time until bids are opened. So our absolute deadline would be next summer, so summer of 2021. That would be the latest that we could open bids and still retain the state reimbursement, which is, I think we figured about 5 to 10% of the debt service each year.
Right. So that's the window. So otherwise, it's a dead project, I would imagine, or a restart, if you will. But
Certainly
again,
non-reimbursable.
right, non-reimbursable, right. So, let's just take it step by step and see where we come up with, and see what the environment, both our financial condition looks like, as well as the market for contracting and financing, which could go better, more to our favor, but you never know. We'll see.
Other questions about that?
Brian, I just wanted to pick back up on your question. There is guidance that came out from PDE just on the 17th talking about school construction, that it can continue, and the districts are to use their best judgment in exercising authority, balancing public health and safety, social distancing, other mitigation, when available, as has been established. So what it does say, though, is in-work is only to be performed on the most limited basis possible. So there is an opportunity, but it's substantially mitigated at this point.
Yeah, and Fran, I can tell you that there are 2 districts that are currently undergoing construction projects that I'm aware of, Union City and Fort LaBeouf, and they both halted construction there. They told their workers to stay home.
I just wonder if there's anything we can do, on that limited basis to get somebody in there. I don't know if it's demolition, if it's electric, if whatever. I mean, there might be one piece that we can move ahead with and get done a little bit sooner and a little bit less expensive.
Well, construction was also one of the things that the governor mentioned as being one of the first things to reopen. He was anticipating that for that May 8th opening, right?
Yes.
So that may make this a moot point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think social distancing is going to be the great impact on construction, especially when it comes to school projects. The biggest impact is going to be how recession-proof is Fairview going to be and what opportunities or challenges will that pose for us going into this recession, because it's going to be is or will be a recession going forward with the project. So yeah, I think by August, given the governor's approach to construction being a very vital part of the economy, by August, I think things should free up as far as the restrictions are concerned. It's going to be more of a financial issue.
From what I'm hearing, some of the homeschooling that's going on right now, the parents helping with the students, that might work in our favor as well. For getting the school built quicker and getting teachers back, getting the kids back in school, and might end up helping us.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Folks, we'll continue on here. Item 7 is for a vaporizer cleaner. This is something that John would like to purchase for the district. Timing seems to be right on this. We did not put it on the agenda this evening for your consideration. I wanted John to have an opportunity to give a brief overview of what the equipment is. John?
It's just it's a cleaner that vaporizes the product. It disperses a very fine mist of atomized particles onto surfaces, and they become positively charged. And the surfaces that they're sprayed onto are grounded or negatively charged. Luke's probably going to laugh at me. I probably screwed that up, but and so it puts an even coat of cleaner over surfaces. It's been used. It's kind of similar to some painting processes where they do the same thing with paint to get an even coat over all spots. It's been used in healthcare. It's kind of new for cleaning, but some districts have rented them when this first started, and I have the opportunity to buy one. You wear it as a backpack, and you can quickly do a room, not just the high touch surfaces, but you can do all the cracks and crevices very quickly. I think it'd be a good addition to the district. I just would like to start with one and then see how it goes from there. If I want to add one to each building after that, there's a possibility.
Maybe we can get a volume discount and offer it to our community. I think there might be a lot of people who might want to buy a backpack, with a disinfecting electrostatic sprayer. That's pretty remarkable for $1,500.
Yeah.
Well, that's just the battery. You gotta look at the total cost.
Oh, geez, that's just forget it.
No, it's what's
I
on
thought
there?
you said it's the backpack.
No, yeah, it's the 1550 one. Yeah, there was 3 options there.
Oh, that's
$41.95 is a plug-in unit made by Clorox. It's a big. I would hate to drag it between buildings. And then the other 2 quotes are the same item, the 1550 and the 1700. It's just the 1550 is it's actually from our supplier where we buy most of our janitorial products. And also the disinfectant that we currently use will work in that machine. So I won't have to make any changes there, which is nice.
John, will you need masks for that?
Yeah, you wear a mask. Like it's a fine mist, but it goes away from the machine. You would just wear what we've been wearing now, a dust mask, not full equipment or anything.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is suspension of policies during the school closing. George prepared this list of motions for us and the list of policies for us and the motion that corresponds with it. Colleen, do you want to summarize those for us?
Let me attempt to get to my screen here.
Ed's pulling it up for you, I think.
Oh, thanks. The majority of these
That's
are
the second
directing-
one, Ed. You want to scroll down to number 2?
Okay.
There you go. Oh, where were they?
I think it's down a little further here.
Let me try to get.
Oh, there it is, yeah.
The majority of these go to things that we're already addressing in terms of suspension of the school year and the requirement for the 180 days, attendance matters, graduation requirements such as senior project, things that are understandable given the circumstances that we're not able to do. And so George has gone through and we reviewed these and are recommending these for adoption tonight.
And I believe there are 5 policies there in addition to 006.
Yeah, I'm trying to. We have the instructional days, remainder of the school year, regarding any new students that are coming in, student attendance. We are looking at the change for the policies of 213 and 214, moving towards a pass-fail system for the work that's being done remotely, and not having the local assessments in terms of keystones, which have been suspended as well. A lot of this commentary is coming directly from PDE as to what they're suspending in terms of our requirements at this point with PSSAs and keystones.
And then to scroll back up, Ed, that would be the first motion. That's the suspension of 006. This will be our first item on the agenda this evening that allows us to actually hold our public meeting using this format.
And specifically, that was part of the new statute that was passed today with Senate Bill 841, allowing local municipalities such as school boards to hold them by these types of telecommunications.
So we didn't necessarily, well, we needed this policy this motion last week, not necessarily today, but.
Not necessarily today, correct.
Okay. If there are no questions on policies, I wanted Mr. Neese to give an update on special education. We had a conference with the Secretary of Education last week, Pedro Rivera from PDE, and he made a comment to us that was really it was really a striking comment. His comment was, just so you know, we know that all 500 school districts in the state will be sued during this time over special education, 504s, IEPs, et cetera. And he said, we just want you to know from the Department of Education that we'll support you as a school district as long as you're making every effort to make accommodations for students. So that scared me a little bit. That scared all of the superintendents. I had a discussion with George, and George tends to agree with Pedro that there probably will be mass lawsuits. I can tell you, though, we feel as a district, we feel pretty good about what we're doing right now. Keith and his team really got out ahead of this thing and worked with parents. And just so you know, as a board, we're not failing. We're not going to allow any special education student to fail during this time. And we're going to continue to reach out to them if there's work to be made up. As a matter of fact, even if work isn't done from a special ed student at this point, those aren't going to go into the grade books at Fs right now. It'll be an incomplete, and we'll make an additional effort beyond the school year to reach out to those kiddos and their families to get work made up. So I think that we're in good shape. Of course, we can't control any kind of litigation, but we've been making every effort to shield ourselves from that. And with that, I just wanted Keith to kind of give you a summary of some of the other things that we're doing from a special ed standpoint. Keith?
Yep, thanks, Dr. Kincaid. Ed, is it okay if I share my screen? Is that on the screen now?
No, it's you right now.
I just stopped it, Keith, so you should be able to get on now.
There you go.
All right, good. Just some bullet points here that I would like to cover just to keep everybody up to speed in case there's parents in the district that reach out to you, or if you were wondering about some things. The first thing is, obviously, this time is hard to navigate FAPE, which is free appropriate public education. I've been working with George Joseph a lot. And then we have a special ed point of contact. Her name is Carrie Hartman. I've been on the phone with her weekly. And then the state, the Bureau of Special Education and PDE, there's been some weekly webinars that I've been able to participate in. Obviously, special education to follow through on IEPs that are in place. It's a concern across not only the state, but the country. With that in mind, I have sent out under George's guidance, a letter was sent to all parents of student who they have students with IEPs and even 504 plans, just kind of explaining the process of how we are going to make every attempt possible to meet the needs of our students with disabilities. We do have a continuation of education plan, which is located on the website as well. The second point is I just want to touch base about our teachers and aides. Our teachers and our aides, they've all been amazing. They've all risen to the occasion. I can't say enough about both parties there, the teachers and the aides. They have done such a tremendous job. My message to them, we meet weekly through a Google Meet, our staff, and our message has just been communication is the number one thing with our parents, to be available, be flexible, and be understanding. And all of our teachers have done an amazing job at that. Our third point is we do have some related services in the district, which is occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech. They've been communicating with the parents weekly through emails and through Schoology. They've been sending resources out to parents. And then just in the past couple of weeks, we have moved to something known as teletherapy, where they're providing some sessions through our Google Hangout Meets, similar to what we are doing tonight. OT and PT started that last week, and our speech, Mrs. Sitnick, has started doing that a little bit this week, and it's worked pretty well. The fourth thing is we've been able to continue with our IEP and 504 meetings through Google Hangouts Meet, similar to what we are doing. We only missed about 2 weeks there. Initially, when the school was closed, we canceled IEPs for a couple of weeks until we were able to get things nailed down through this platform. Since then, we've completed about 15 IEPs virtual, and that includes all the special education teachers, the related services, and as well as the regular ed teachers as well. Those have gone extremely well. The next thing is we've gotten some questions about the evaluation process. So not to take, I talk all night about this process, but specifically when a student is in the evaluation process, our psychologist has 60 days, not school days, 60 days to complete the evaluation and get a report to the parents. So we had about 10 or so students in that process when the school was shut down. And what I mean by being in that process, the parents had consented to conduct the evaluation, so the process had started. So those 60 days had started, but those require face-to-face testing with our psychologist. So those evaluations that were started where the testing was not completed, those are suspended at this time until we are able to get back into school. A letter was sent out to those families that affected, explaining that process will pick back up as soon as we are allowed back in school. The second thing are reevaluations. Those can continue because some of those necessarily don't mean new face-to-face testing. We can conduct reevaluations by just updating through IEP progress, through IEP goal progress, through academic achievement and things like that. So we can continue those. And then there's also an option to waive reevaluations, and we've done that with a couple of our students as well. Parental requests, we have had a couple requests during this time for from parents to have their child be evaluated for special education. We are continuing, if we get a parental request, we will send those permissions out. Again, we have 60 days from the time the permission is signed, but with those 60 days, the summer days do not count. So that gives us some time to continue with those in the fall. But any parental requests we get, we will continue by sending out a permission to evaluate to our parents. Another big thing at this time is number 6 there, early intervention. These are our kiddos who are currently have special education services in preschool. We have 11 of those students coming to us next year. I believe 8 of those or 9 are speech, and we have 2 who will be in our autistic support room. The way that process works is usually we send out permission to reevaluate, and then we conduct some testing to put into our own format. But since we cannot do any face-to-face testing, we will just adopt the testing that that child currently has in their preschool evaluation report. We'll put a report together, and then we'll hold the IEP meeting virtually at the end of May. So that process can still take place. Another big one that's been talked about a lot in the last week is extended school year. We have 32 students who qualified. That was all determined prior to the shutdown. And extended school year is anticipated to start on June 23rd. And we're going to proceed as if it's going to take place. We have not gotten any word from the state to cancel it or anything like that at this time. So we are going to proceed again like it's going to take place. I was in a webinar today, and they talked about that the eligibility for extended school year should not be based on the COVID-19, rather than it should be based on the 7 factors that go along with extended school year. Again, extended school year, the one big thing is those are for students who regress and then can't recoup those skills when we come back to school. Again, those 32 students were determined prior to the closure. The last thing I talked about this school year with the board was this was our year to be monitored by the state, our special education program. A lot of extensive work and things went into that, not only by myself, but our teachers. We prepared for about the last 5 months to be ready for our visit, which was going to take place on March 25th, which would have been the week after the school closure. At this time, that is suspended. The latest word that I got is the possibility of starting that process over and completing that monitoring during the 20 and 21 school year. I do have a call towards the end of the week with our special ed point of contact, and I'm hoping she gives me some good news that we don't have to completely start the process over, but I am thinking that's probably what's going to happen, and that'll take place in the 2021 school year. So a lot of information there. I can, if anybody wants this document, just email me. I can share it with you. Again, the one thing I want to kind of reiterate is our teachers and our aides have been amazing. They've done this job throughout this.
Keith, can you share that document with Molly and she can put it in the shared folder for tonight, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Then folks will have access to it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
We have 2 purchases over $2,000. Keith, one of those is yours for the Fast Bridge training. Quick summary of that.
Yeah, so for this past school year, for the 1920 school year, we purchased a progress monitoring tool known as FastBridge. And it's a tool to use as a progress monitoring tool for our IEP goals. It's not to take place of the things we currently use. It's to add to those things. And it's also going to be used K to 12 to get more of a streamline so students can be tracked using the same type of tool throughout. When I purchased it, we tried to train our teachers through videos and through things, presentations just through me. And we just aren't ready to roll that out yet completely without a more formal training from the company. I tried to save the money last summer by not going that route, but our teachers would like that, and that's what I'm presenting to happen this July. July 29th is when I have the training.
Thank you, Keith. And the other purchase over 2,000 is for our annual senior supplement for the yearbook. And that's something that we do every year. That is actually covered through the cost of the yearbook. But both of those items will be on the agenda for May 4th. Item number 12 is our IU5 LIEP contract. That's an annual contract that we have with the IU. Now, most of our services for special education services and alike are done in-house. There are some things, though, not that this is a special education service, but there are some things that we contract with the IU on, and English language learners is one of those things. And we have the ELL teacher. We actually have a couple of ELL teachers come in from the IU to work with our English language learners. That is a position that we've talked about in the past of hiring our own, but because the contract each year fluctuates on that so much based on eligible students, we've not done that. It ranges any year. Any years we have a low number, and some years we happen to have a high number. Right now we have a high number of students, so they actually send two different. Is it two right now, Keith or Ben?
We actually have 3 this year.
3 this year, based on the number of English language learners. Those are students who English isn't the first language in their home. A lot of Russian students, some Chinese, some different ones this year too, Keith, right?
Yeah, a couple Chinese, couple Russian, couple, I think it's Telugu. I think we have a handful of those. I think we have about 20 in our district that qualified for ELL services this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Item 13 is a paging system for capital projects. Ed, John, you guys want to tag team that? Ed?
Yes, let me bring up the quote here. So this paging system was installed in '95. So the middle school has a really old system. The elementary and high school systems have been updated here recently in the last 5 years. This system is at a point where we can't get replacement parts. It's hard to get service on the system. Kind of holding it together with duct tape right now. So we've anticipated replacing this system in cap projects. You can see the cost. This is through Advent. This is a cost through CoStar, so we would not be required to bid it. You can see the cost is $26,365. So this is this would be a turnkey system at the middle school. We do have this budgeted, as I mentioned, and this would be on for your consideration. I think it comes up on at the first May meeting.
The price came in really good, Ed, and I mean, that's a good system, and that middle school system is hanging on by a thread. There's a computer, I don't know how old it is, but it's not even something that the programs that run on it can't even run on a newer computer, I don't believe. It's every time the power flashes, we're always worried that it turns back on. So it's time.
There are, am I muted?
I can hear you.
Okay. There are 2 phases to that system. One is the paging system, and then the other would be the clocks. We also need to address that clock system, but for now, because that's another pretty significant cost, for now we're just focusing on the paging side. And that'll be for your consideration in May. So if there's any questions between now and then, feel free to direct those to me or John. We have a Norbit Wellness Initiative purchase. We've done a few of these throughout the years. you may have heard us talk about within the Norbert account, there's a small account for some wellness initiatives. We've used that before to buy a couple of pieces of equipment, maybe like a treadmill or a stepper or something along those lines. We've also used it for incentives in the past for different things. I mentioned to you that Ms. Jones, high school teacher, has launched a STEP initiative challenge with our staff. And with that, we're going to use some of the wellness dollars that we have to buy some prizes for the teams. So Ed is showing them right there. Justin, anything to add to that?
No, that basically covers it. I think it's the third or fourth time we've asked to do this for the STEPS challenge.
Yep. And this is what the monies are for. They're for, wellness initiatives throughout the district for our staff. And this is just one of those things. Laura is actually on our broadcast tonight. Miss Jones, you want to say anything about that?
Sure. So we're just trying, I'm doing it with another teacher in the middle school, Miss Haley Andres, and we're just trying to fight the quarantine blues a little bit and trying to get the staff as active as possible. For like the prizes that we kind of picked, we really tried to make them through local businesses just so that we're offering some kind of support to the community while we're trying to get our steps up. So
good. And I put a dream team together for myself, so we'll probably be taking home one of those prizes. Just an FYI. That's a challenge to you, Miss Jones. Personnel matters. We have the one hire that I mentioned tonight. This is Carly Fenton, and I'm going to let Steve or Keith give a little bit of information about Carly here. We also have a transfer. Mrs. Costello is who has been a first grade teacher for the last several years, is making a move to kindergarten, which is a really welcome transfer to get someone with her level of experience into that grade level. We've lost a couple of kindergarten teachers through transfer, so adding Terry Costello is going to be really a positive thing for that group. Mrs. Lavin at the middle school in attendance will be resigning at the end of the year, and we have one FMLA for a custodian. Keith, do you want to give a little background on Carly Fenton, our recommendation for the middle school autistic support?
Yep, that would be great. Carly Fenton, she did a super job throughout the interview process. She stood out from the beginning. She is originally from Pittsburgh and attended Mercer's University, and she is a dual major of early childhood and special education. And she has a master's in special education with a concentration in autism that she received in 2018. She currently is teaching at Parkside Elementary School in Virginia since 2018 in a self-contained autistic support classroom. She also has some other experience. She was the lead teacher for a summer program, which was the education of autistic kids, which took place, I believe, in Pittsburgh. She did that from June of 2014 through 2018. And we are excited to have her on board. By approving her so early, she will be able to maybe participate in some of our transition meetings for some fourth graders going up to fifth grade. Those are the students she will be getting next year. Parents will be able to put a face with a name, and she may be able to do some things with our extended school year to meet some of the kiddos that way. So we're excited to have Carly Fenton on board.
Yeah, and Carly, being a Mercyhurst graduate, she's familiar with some of our current folks, Cole Lowe at the high school, Haley Andrus at the middle school, as well as Libby Clark, another special education teacher we have at the elementary school. So she's comes from some good stock and good company there. One interesting thing about her is that she attended the Pittsburgh Public Schools as a student, and she went to the Performing Arts High School in Pittsburgh. She was a dancer, which is just a nice little twist that she brings up, because we're always looking for someone to help out with that Fairview dance team, and she might be the perfect candidate for that. And Carly is going into her 3rd year of teaching. We are starting her on our 2nd step. It's a small pay cut for her from where she was, but that's typically what we do when we bring people in from out of district. We typically give them credit for half of their years of service, and that's what we were able to do here, and she was very happy with that. So she and her boyfriend are going to be moving to the area and hopefully relocating somewhere in the West County area. Questions on personnel matters? Mr. Natali, if there aren't any questions, that takes us through our agenda, and we would be prepared to go through the consent agenda for the board meeting, and maybe paying particular attention to that 2nd item, which is the consent agenda approval of the March meeting, if you want to look at what those items are individually. Ed can probably, well, if you want to look at the consent agenda in its entirety, and then Ed can pull up the March agenda. There it is.
So looking at the March agenda, we are on tonight's agenda, we're approving all the motions listed on the March agenda under business operations and et cetera. So does anyone want, given that we're moving these motions as a whole on one motion, that'd be motion 2 on page 1 of our tonight's meeting agenda. Anyone want any of the motions from March 23rd pulled out for separate voting?
And Alan, we can kind of, well, Ed, can you back up just a sec? We can kind of give a summary of those. I mean, obviously it's a retroactive approval because we've already paid these bills and we've issued these purchase orders for these 5 capital projects purchases. But these were all things that were discussed a couple of times in the past, the lockers, the carpet, et cetera. Under the education and policy, those were just some policy approvals for 1st and 2nd readings. The job descriptions for the new positions that we had posted. And then on the purchase over $2,000, we just had our annual Career Street contribution there.
Okay.
And employee ECA, the gym floor finish, that's our annual finishing of our gym floors, which we've discussed. The professional visit there was canceled for Ms. Skelly. The beverage contract, that is our new 5-year agreement with Coca-Cola. That's approved, but it's kind of put on hold now because they're not filling machines with the school being closed. And the softball trip to the Cal Ripken experience was also canceled. Budget and finance, the IU5 budget, the GASB 75 valuation, which is a requirement. The Erie auto auction, that's just to give us permission to sell some of our vehicles up there. And our general supply purchases for 2021. The Fortinet is our annual renewal for Brian and our security software. And personnel matters was pretty light. It was just a transfer, right, Molly?
Thank you, Eric. So given
right.
given that list from March 23rd, we have that on for approval tonight under item 2. Anyone want any of those motions from March 23rd severed for separate voting? Hearing none, we'll take the motion as written on tonight's agenda. Looking at tonight's agenda for April 20th, business operations, I'll just basically recite the title of that policy, suspending number 1 and number 2. The consent agenda items under B include budgetary transfers, budget amendment, and bills payable. Can we include the treasurer's report in that, Colleen, or does that stand separate?
I think we can include that.
Okay, we'll include treasurer's report and consent agenda items. Ed has given his report, so that'll be included under consent agenda items for business operations. Anyone want 1, 2, 3, or 4 separated for separate voting? Hearing none, move on to Committee of the Whole. I'm not going to read all that. We just summarized it. Education and policy, their consent agenda items include actually one item, The second final reading of policies, because personnel matters number 2 will stand alone by our policy. And I think that's it for motions. So what we will do is we will adjourn the committee of the whole if I'm hearing nothing more. Dr. Kincaid?
That's all we have. Yep.
Okay, and we will move on to the public board meeting. I have to admit, I don't have a flag with me, but looking at the American Legion rules, we can just stand in our place, hand on hearts, and we can recite the pledge together. Okay, let's recite the pledge. Stand. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
to
of the United States of America,
States of America and to the republic
for which it
which
stands,
stands one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and justice for all. Okay. At this time, just pulling up my agenda for today. Before we ask for public comment on agenda items, I'm going to ask for a moment of silence to recognize and remember and acknowledge all the victims of the COVID-19 pandemic, both near and far. So if we can have a moment of silence for the victims of the pandemic. Thank you. Okay, any public comment on tonight's agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move on to business operations. Number 1, suspending policy 006.1, authorized remote meetings. I move for the adoption of the suspension of that policy and authorized remote meetings as reflected in the agenda and the terms thereof. Can I have a second?
Second. Okay.
If you do second, please identify your name so Molly can make sure she gets the minutes correct. I think that was Eric.
Yep.
All right, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Hearing none. Moving on. Number 2, approval of March 23rd motions. March 23rd, 2020 motions. I move board approval of the motions listed under business operations on the March 23rd, 2020 public board agenda as presented.
Second.
Jennifer.
Jennifer seconds. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Consent agenda items. B, I move board approval of the following consent agenda items for business operations. 1, budgetary transfers. 2, budget amendment. 3, bills payable. And 4, the treasurer's report for March 2020 as presented by Mr. Barnes.
Second New.
Ms. New seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Tobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on. Any correspondence tonight, Molly?
None.
Thank you. We recognize all our visitors who may be joining us remotely and virtually, either by watching this in real time, those of us who are together, or those who will be watching later. Thank you for joining us in this unusual venue, in an unusual manner, but we appreciate your participation. Committee reports. The Committee of the Whole and public board meetings were scheduled for March 23rd, 2020 were canceled to comply with the governor's orders. The Fairview Board of School Directors did meet as a Committee of the Whole on March 9th, 2020 at 6:32 p.m. in the Fairview High School. Board members present were Mrs. Bryant, Mr. Farrar, Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Liccardi, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Natale, Mrs. New, and Mrs. Sobin. Also in attendance were Attorney Joseph, Dr. Kincaid, Mr. Barnes, Dr. Zona, Dr. Lane, Mr. Bell, Mr. Farringer, Mr. Herring, Dr. Horn, Mrs. Skelly, Mr. Neese, Mr. Faggetti, and Paul Bocek. Committee of the Whole, suspension of policies during school closing. I present the motion as written in the agenda to suspend policies during the school closing as reflected in items number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, those being school attendance and the other policies as listed. Can I have a second?
Second, New.
Pete, did you get that, Molly?
I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Move in second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Sorry, yeah, Mahoney, yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to education policy, Mrs. Bryant.
I move board approval of the consent agenda items of the Education Policy Committee as presented. Second and final reading of policies. I move board approval of the following policies presented here for a second and final reading.
Second, New.
Moved in second. We have roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Bryant. Moving on to personnel matters, I move board approval of personnel matters as recommended and or read by the superintendent and as identified on the personnel lists be approved, and with the stipulation that the positions be filled only if the program or activity is to be conducted as determined by board action.
Second, New.
Moved in second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. New,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobin,
Yes.
Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Ms. Farrar,
Yes.
Mr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Liccardi,
Yes.
Mr. Natale.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for those motions and their approval. Moving on to reports. IU5 liaison, Mrs. New. I imagine there's not a lot to report, but I'll defer to you, of course.
We did not have a meeting last month, and we have our meeting this coming Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I don't have a legislative liaison report. However, as you know, there was an announcement from PSBA regarding the pending legislation to freeze real estate taxes. We think we mentioned that earlier. And I guess I'd like to ask you to, before I do reach out to our legislator, Mr. Sawney, about that issue, I'd like to get the board's temperature, if you will, on that issue. Without, of course, there's nothing that's going to be a matter for us to consider unless that legislation is passed. But I would like you to do, if you have a personal opinion about it, if you could email me and share with me your opinions, maybe during the course of this week, then I'll relate the general tenor of our boards. Obviously, the administration and PSBA are strongly opposed to it, but I would like to hear from each of you if you have an opinion. If you have an opinion to share, please do email me either at my Gmail or school email account, if you would. Thank you. That's all I have. Tech school, Mr. Mahoney?
Yeah, no report. The meeting's Thursday.
Thank you, sir. Solicitor's report, Attorney Stump. Thank you for joining us tonight and for all of your input earlier during the meeting. Anything else to add?
We're just trying to keep up with all of the statutory provisions that are being proposed and coming through right now. I just had another rash of it come in.
Gotta avoid those rashes. Thank you though, and thank George as well, and thanks for supporting our efforts here through this time.
Our pleasure.
Turn it back over to Dr. Kincaid for commendables.
Thank you, Mr. Natale. I did want to give our our building administration a chance to really brag about some of the things that have been happening the last few weeks, starting with the elementary school and Mrs. Skelly and Dr. Horn.
All right. Hey, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Hey, before I start going over what's happening at the elementary school, I do have to give a big shout out to Lori Squires, Teresa Bemis, Cherry Clark, and all the food service and bus drivers. I go down to the serving station every day, and they are fantastic. They're in good spirits. They're just really doing an impressive job. The bus drivers show up to escort people in. One of our bus drivers dresses up in a funny suit every day just to bring smiles to the kids' faces. It's a very touching scene, and I just have to give all those people a big shout out. But at the elementary school, we are very lucky. We have, I'm not saying we have 100% of all assignments handed in, but we have 99.9% student participation. There's one, and I'm going to his house tomorrow to find out what's going on. But with a building of 680 kids, when you're looking at only one child not doing it, that's pretty impressive. And my teachers, they're calling home, they're following up with their kids. Every teacher did an online meeting with their classes, and we got rave reviews about that. They're being flexible, which I think everybody has to be in this time. But there are certain kids or parents who have not been able to accommodate this online type of schooling. So we deliver packets to their houses just to make sure learning is happening. So we're looking at different avenues for kids and for parents. And I've been very proud of the students, the staff, and especially a big shout out to the bus drivers and custodians. Julie, you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I'll just say that even though these times are kind of crazy, we've seen quite a few silver linings in our building, and we're just really proud of the staff working together collaboratively and providing the best education possible with our kids. Our kiddos never took their iPads home, and they've done a really wonderful job. We've checked in with Scott and Brian, and I think it's really going to transform how some of our education takes place, because our kids are capable of doing so many things under this crisis that we either didn't have the opportunity for them to do, or they didn't have the chance to do before, and now they're doing it. So I'm just really proud of our teachers and our students for rising to the occasion and seizing all the opportunities they have amongst the crisis. There's so many great silver linings for what education is going to look like in our building in the fall, or whenever we do return, for all the opportunities they're seizing in this moment. So that's been wonderful. We've been posting out that we're doing some initiative for cards for seniors. We had a couple of members of the community reach out about trying to get cards out for our residents that are local, that are missing their family, that they can't see during this time. So if you have any time, please make cards or ask your family or friend to make cards for seniors, and we'll be dropping those off shortly. And we're just proud of what everyone's doing, and we are persevering, and education's continuing on. So thank you very much for all of your support.
And I want to add one last thing. Many people have prepared us to go online, but I have to give a big shout out to Justin Zona, because if it wasn't for him and bringing in Schoology, we would not be the envy of every school in the region. And I think a big kudos goes to Justin for his initiatives that got us to where we are. I mean, it goes to many people with Eric getting and Ed getting all the iPads, but if it weren't for the kind of the infrastructure, the background working, we wouldn't be able to push out all the content that we are.
Keep up the great work.
And that's all I have.
This is Steve. I guess I'm up next. Good evening, everybody. I'm at my desktop and no camera, so you didn't get to see me throughout the meeting. No loss there. But Dr. Horn is being very modest, and I do want to echo his comments to the food service department. But Ben has been delivering to about a dozen houses every day, and that's no small feat. Matt has been delivering to a few homes as well, so I would like to add them to the commendables along with the food service folks. I get the privilege of watching it's happening here at the middle school every day and seeing all the families coming through, and we really are doing quite a service for our families and for folks in the community and providing lunches. So Ben, you were too modest. I kind of echo what Ben and Julie were saying. There's so many wonderful things happening. I think about when this all started, within like 2 hours, one of my teachers pulled up or put together a video to help colleagues prepare to do some online stuff that maybe they'd never done before. I've had another teacher, Karen Smith, doing video tutoring to some of her fellow colleagues, helping them on using some of the technologies they may not have used previously. You've probably seen the video that Haley Andres put together with many of the faculty, staff, and administration in the district, just sending out a message to our families and our students. Deborah Lavin took over doing all the birthday cards for students from home, and we're still sending out birthday cards, even though we don't see the kids to distribute them or dropping them in the mail. Linda, the mail lady, still coming in and delivering mail to us a couple times a week and taking our mail out, which really helps tremendously. And all the support staff that are working remotely or coming in and taking a turn has been really fantastic. We've had some growing pains, but it's gone more smoothly than I'd imagined. Getting all teachers pretty consistent with how they're delivering things throughout the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So we've learned some things here, and I think it will benefit us moving forward in the future with using Schoology consistently, and that's kind of exciting for us. So all in all, it's been some great experience. And I have to say, every single person at this building and the others are going above and beyond in what they do. And while I get some friends who might text me a joke and ask how I'm enjoying my vacation, and I'm sure the teachers are getting those too, I would say people are working harder now than when school is in session. So I think that goes for just about every single person in the district. So I do commend everybody for their efforts, and in particular my middle school folks. So, Matt?
Yeah, I think Luke's going to go ahead and go first tonight for us.
Yeah, I'll start off the high school here. In addition to some of the great things that the elementary school and the middle school said, some of my commendables have actually already been mentioned tonight. In with Laura Jones and Haley Andrus doing this step challenge to try to bring our staff together a little bit, something to do during the shutdown. Also, if you were on early, you heard Eric mention all the masks that were delivered today. I think just today alone there were over 800 masks that were dropped off, and this is our second run. We did quite a few a couple weeks ago as well. So that's a great way that our community is coming together to create these masks and get them out to those in need. And a lot of that work has been done by Tessa Staub, one of our teachers that has really done a lot to help organize, along with Dr. Kincaid, in organizing, getting these masks out to everyone. One other thing in the realm of athletics, as disappointing as it is to have to cancel our seniors' end of the winter sports and all of the spring sports, we still do have some athletes that are going on to participate at the next level. And we had planned a date to honor those students and give them a press conference in March, right when we shut down, basically. So we missed that opportunity to have that press conference for the students. So Mrs. Fariska is organizing a way to still honor those students virtually and still give them their signing day and their press conference. So, you know, that will be published soon, and you'll see some information regarding those students.
All right, I'll go ahead and finish up here. We're heading on 2 hours, and I think Mrs. Licardi has been outside that entire time, and it's about 42 degrees, and I don't think it's getting any warmer for her out there, so I'll be relatively quick. The first thing I'd like to shout out to was a student-led initiative that if you're on the high school Schoology page, you may have seen the tutoring program that Ms. Jones is pushing out that allows both students and teachers to access peer tutoring virtually. That idea initiated from a student, actually, that reached out to Dr. Kincaid. Philip Thiem reached out to Dr. Kincaid and asked about the opportunity for him and some of his classmates to help his peers that might need some help transitioning to the virtual online experience. We do have a peer tutoring system in place, but we've never done it virtually. So Ms. Jones took that up and has done a tremendous job now after spring break, hooking up students that need a little bit of extra help with some upperclassmen and NHS members and just students in general who are willing to tutor. The nice thing about this program too is that it's effective now, but we anticipate it having legs kind of beyond the closure and sometime when we're back face to face as well. The one thing I wanted to talk about real quick too is just if you're getting questions about graduation, I mean, we're getting questions about lots of stuff at the high school, but graduation in particular exists kind of in a really two separate buckets, different ideas for what we're going to do. We remain committed to the idea that as much as humanly possible, we really are going to try to have some kind of live face-to-face experience for our students. We have no idea what that's going to look like yet. If you've listened to the high school videos, that's because, as I've said in those videos, we don't need to know right now. There's a lot that's going to happen in the next month and a half, as a lot has already happened in the last month and a half. And the buckets of ideas exist really are, what options do we have if we are allowed to assemble in large groups, and what options do we have if we are not allowed to assemble in large groups? So feel free to share any ideas with me, pass them along. I feel like I've had been in discussions about just about all of them, but there's never enough in terms of what our possibilities might be and what ideas we can explore to represent the class of 2020. In addition to all the shout outs that everybody else gave, full disclosure, Steve mentioned that I was delivering lunches. I did deliver some lunches in the last week or so. Our AmeriCorps member did need some hours, so I farmed that responsibility out to Carl Fonacella, so he's now delivering the lunches that I had done. And just a quick shout out to everybody who is a teacher or a parent who's working that has small kids at home. I literally don't know how you do it. If you are a teacher teaching kids and you have small kids at home, or you are a parent with small kids at home trying to work and teach those kids as well. We have some amazing parents and teachers in our district that have really picked up, I don't even want to say pick up the slack. I just literally don't know how they do it. And there's some people that do exceptional things, and there are some people that do some really exceptional things. And I would add them to that list. All right, thanks a lot.
Obviously, we don't coordinate commendables because my thunder has been stolen here tonight. But I did want to thank our cafeteria workers. They've been absolutely amazing with what they've done, and they are essential employees for us. But there have just been no complaints, no issues with them coming in and preparing these meals every day, and they've done it with a smile. So kudos to them. Luke mentioned our masks. We have made over 1,500 masks now, and these are pretty nice quality masks. I know Eric Hayes, one of our board members there, and his family has been involved with that. Mr. Natali's daughter has done some for us as well. And we're going to be delivering the second shipment of those today and in the coming days. I did want to say that, if there's been a silver lining maybe through all of this, this difficulty, that is that I don't know that we've had any better professional development for our faculty, our teachers, and our support staff over the last couple of weeks. Just the camaraderie and the way they've helped one another, and they've learned these different platforms and different ways to deliver instruction and material to our kids has really been phenomenal. It's well beyond what we could have ever prepared in a professional development format. Not that we wanted to do it this way, but boy, have they risen to the occasion. And lastly, and probably most importantly, I meet each week with the group of superintendents throughout the intermediate unit, and we all share experiences and try to help one another out. And I can tell you that we are really fortunate right now. And I don't say this all the time, and maybe I should say it more often, but we're really fortunate with the relationship that we have with our teacher association right now. We have had zero concerns, zero issues, zero complaints, nothing but really positive relationship with our group. And this really shows how much we are on the same team and that we are working together as a family. I know that they've been asked to do, our teachers have been asked to do some things that they weren't necessarily 100% comfortable with. But they know what is in the best interest of our students, and they've set their feelings aside, and they've done those things. So thank you to Mrs. Elliott and the FEA for working with us together to accomplish what we've accomplished during the last several weeks, and what we'll surely accomplish here throughout the rest of the school year. And I did want to talk about graduation, but Matt hit the highlights on that. I can just tell you that you've heard me say in my videos and my correspondence is that one way or another, we will recognize this class. They're as deserving, if not more deserving, than any graduating class that we've recognized here in the past. And we will do it somehow in a big way moving forward here. Mr. Natale, that is all we have on commendables. I will turn it back to you for board remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Kincaid. Any secretary's report, Molly?
No, sir.
No,
Thank
she's
you.
shaking her head.
Thank you, Molly. Board remarks. Anyone wish to address the group this evening from the board?
This is Fran.
I
would
will.
like to.
Okay, Fran, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to say I've been so impressed with the community from the district, both in many, many ways. The social media has been great. Recognizing the seniors one at a time on social media has been wonderful. Eric, your videos have been very informative and timely. Just that feeling of community was not lost for a day. And I just want to commend everybody for the great job they did in getting the online education going. There are some hiccups here and there with some students, but I think overall they're getting through that. Parents are getting through it. I think they are getting a little bit tired of it and appreciating the teachers and administration a little bit more than maybe they had in the past. But it's all worked out great. And if nothing else, even to continue the online stuff a little bit throughout the summer, I think would be helpful. You always hear teachers saying, come September, when the kids have the summer off, that it's a little tough getting them back into the swing of things. That may be something that's once or twice a week that they can do to kind of keep in the swing of things there. I think we've all learned to work a little smarter, a little leaner, and it's all been for good. So I just appreciate everything everybody has done for the district. Thank you.
So to go after Fran, like everybody has mentioned, first of all, the lunches have been amazing. We have tried those. Phil is out there, the bus driver, every day in a different outfit. Yes, there was a bunny. There's been chickens whenever they had chicken nuggets. Today he was a fox. His wife has been apparently getting him new outfits on Amazon to wear. But they're always so happy and so pleasant and so excited. And it's very nice. for my kids to come along in the car and just to wave at them. Some of the elementary school teachers drove around before Easter and dropped off little surprises for kids at the houses, which was absolutely amazing. I mean, the kids just love these meetings. They love to go to a Google Meets and talk to their teachers and talk to their classes. And every night that Miss Russell uploads a story, my kindergartner is rushing to her iPad to go listen to the story. They are just putting in so much time. And at the high school, you know, Ms. Jones is on this call. She's teaching my kid geometry on the computer. And, you know, Becca Turner, I sought advice from her when I was trying to put lessons on myself and asking her, okay, what did you find that worked really well? What device are you using? You know, what method are you recording? And it is amazing, that infrastructure that Ben mentioned. It's huge. You guys have no idea how much better of a place Fairview was than everybody else. And it's still, despite the fact that the infrastructure was here, it is so much more work to teach online than it is to teach in person. And it is so much more difficult to teach with your kids there than it is to be in a classroom with your students who are your other kids. And the amount that we can't do because we're not there, it's harder. And our teachers here in Fairview are doing a bang up job with that. And we all are so lucky to have them. They're amazing. And the video that Ms. Andrus sent out put tears in everybody's eyes whenever we were looking at the little notes from the teachers. And so I think that this has really shown us how lucky we are to be here. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Pam.
Certainly to echo some of what Pam said, you know, during this, as I've talked to family and friends that have kids in other districts, I mean, talk about being so proud of the district and how well we were placed to do this. I mean, you know, people at other places were just like, wow, we can't believe Fairview's ready to do this. We can't believe what your kids are already doing. Their kids are just starting to do it. So, you know, and it was a great opportunity to talk to them about, yeah, we've been laying the groundwork for this for years, thanks to all the leadership and innovation that has been happening, that our team, Justin and Dr. Kincaid and all the leadership has been doing. So been so proud to be part of the Fairview School District, always, but more so than ever these last couple weeks, as I've been talking to other parents in other districts. So thanks for everything you guys are doing. Certainly recognize the work the teachers have been putting in. I know they're probably like me and my team, we're working odd hours, long hours, unusual hours. I know my kids have emailed teachers on the weekend and they get a response in 20 minutes, you know. So certainly recognize that and appreciate that the teachers are just being flexible and rolling with this and doing everything they can for our students. So thank you.
Just before anyone speaks, Ed, could we eliminate the agenda? I have one in front of me, and go to the speakers. Yeah, so that where the speaker might be shown. Just might give us a little bit better presentation. Thanks, Ed. Anyone else from the board wish to make a public remark? Hearing anyone else from the board wish to make a public remark before I move on? Okay, I will move on to my remarks this evening. I obviously echo what everyone has said before. I don't want to repeat, but certainly I'm blown away by the use of technology, by the use of connection and communication, starting from Eric all the way down through the other administrators and the professional staff. Just really impressed and really grateful for the effort you're all putting in, for the connection you're making to your students, to the community as a whole, and especially Eric with his positive messaging. It's genuine, you know it, and you share it and you feel it. So Eric, thank you so much for continuing a positive message, both internally and externally, regarding the challenges we're facing and your leadership through them. I want to thank Ed for being our right on top of things. As you can see, he's already anticipating, planning, working with scenarios that we wouldn't even be thinking of, but that's his job and he takes it very seriously. So Ed, thank you so much for that, for keeping an eye out for that, our financial challenges that may lie ahead. I want to thank the board for your continuing support, your participation, your interest. Thank you for being on top of things. Thank you for being a voice in the community for the district, with your neighbors, your community members, your fellow churchgoers, wherever you're seeing people in the community, people getting gas. I know that you're probably challenged with questions and challenged with issues, but we appreciate your support of the district, and obviously appreciate your continuing participation in leading the district through this. I want to thank all the building principals. Thank you so much for your leadership in the buildings, leading your staff, and making this transition to distance learning so seamless. I also want to touch on graduation. I made it clear to Eric and to Matt, particularly to Eric, that I really wanted to be a part of that planning. I wanted to be the board's voice when it comes to that, and I have ulterior motives. I think I sit in a unique position. I have a graduating senior, and I'm also a board member, a longtime board member, and I've seen experienced and participated in very remarkable commencement exercises. Every year is remarkable, but they're so special and they're so meaningful, and it's the culmination of every bit of effort goes into that day for 13 years for some people, 13 years for some kids. And it's such a meaningful day, and it's not a passing thing like, how to deal with this issue on a day-to-day basis. This is a significant issue to deal with. I want to thank Matt for having an open mind, for looking at all the options. I really do appreciate that. I like Eric I'm committed to a live event of some nature, some type of live interaction, whether that's in person on your 2 feet or in your 4 wheels in a parking lot, not sure, or a parade. We don't know. As Matt said, things are evolving daily. We just recognized that the Air Force Academy had a live event without spectators, but had their cadets graduating in their normal place with social distancing in place. They heard their speakers. They participated in their commencement. Those are the models I'm looking at. Those are the models I'm advocating. Certainly within the law, and certainly within reason, and certainly within bounds of safety. So commencement is going to be a very meaningful, very, very meaningful event this year, because it is the culmination of 13 years of child rearing, 13 years of education, 13 years of investment in these kids. Why do we do this if not to prepare them for the day after graduation? So that's so important. So I am being your advocate as both a board member and as a parent. If anyone has ideas to share, feel free to pass them along. If you see a news story about it, pass it along to either me or Matt or Dr. Kincaid, so we can brainstorm and nail this down, get this going. Things are going to change rapidly. They are already changing. So keep that in mind. Thank you for participating tonight. I know it's been a long night, but we haven't met in quite a while, and I do look forward to meeting with you again. And barring any other comments or concerns, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Stay safe.